Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the This Is Me podcast. I'm Karen.
And I'm Ellie, and today we have Katy joining us. Katy, who after working in corporate for 20 years, now runs her own consultancy business. So Katy, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for all the support that you have given me and Karen and women of our time.
Yeah,
I don't think we would be where we are if it wasn't for you forcing us to do it when we
didn't want to.
You'd have been fine. But thank you for
Well,
having me. It's lovely to be
maybe
here.
we would have been, but we certainly wouldn't have been here today. We wouldn't have got here in the timescale that we did if it wasn't for you. So thank you so much for all of your help and all of your kindness. To get us started, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Okay. I mean, I was thinking about this one, and do you do work? Do you do home? So I'll do a little bit of both. So, had a very, very happy childhood, I guess. It was me, my mum, my dad, and my sister. My mum and dad still live in the same house. And I kind of did the normal, usual thing. So, you do your GCSEs, you do your A levels, you go to university, and I kind of just followed that kind of normal, expected path, I guess. When I was at university, I did biology. I'm a scientist by background. Yeah, biology in York. And realised pretty quickly that I hated the lab and didn't want to be in the lab at all. I miss people. And at the time, it was quite controversial. And I was one of the first people to do a non-lab based dissertation. So they even had all sorts of discussions. Can we let her do it? But it was all about public understanding of science and public perceptions of science, and I guess that's always kind of been a theme throughout, is people. For me, I'm a real people person. So left university, knew I didn't want to be in the lab, and started work at a company that did online dating for pharma companies. So people with pipeline gaps, people with technologies, and matching them up, which doesn't sound very innovative, but I'm older than you think. So it was like 20 odd years ago now. And it was a tiny business, but I learned so much because you did a bit of everything. I was admin, I was HR, I was procurement, which meant I bought the tea bags and the paper. I did everything and learned so much. And then realised, I was becoming the master of that place, and I was still in my early 20s at that point. Put my CV up on a job board, as you did, and a recruiter rang me and said, have you considered regulatory? And I said, what's that? Looked into it a bit more, and kind of the rest is history, really. So I went into regulatory for medicines, so doing all of the paperwork that you need to do to be able to sell products. So prove they're safe, prove they work, prove that you can make them the same way every single time. And then from there, kind of my career's just grown, really, and I've worked across all sorts of different products, lots of ones that you will have in your kitchen cupboard. And through it all, I guess there's always been a theme around people, and kind of helping people be the best that they can be. And I think, yes, I am a technical person. Yes, I am a scientist, but I'm still quite emotional. No, not in a bad way, but I have that kind of gut feeling and gut reaction, and then I'll let the data and I'll let the evidence kind of back me up. But a lot of the time, I'm quite a kind of gut instinct kind of person. So yeah, worked. I had an amazing time when I was in the corporate environment. I got so many experiences that I could never have even dreamed of. And went to amazing places and met amazing people. I traveled the world, and I
went to COP. I always remember that. I was like, when you told me, I was like,
yeah, I went to COP26 in Glasgow. I mean,
was it the Commonwealth Games?
Yeah, went to the Commonwealth Games. We did a lot of work in the Middle East. Been to Brazil, been to Asia. So I had an amazing time, and I think one of the things that's interesting for me is everybody talks about, when you're in a corporate environment, it's all about your next move and your plan. And actually, I was very much somebody who took an opportunity when it came up that was interesting. And I always say to people, probably the two most defining roles of my career were Brexit, which you could never have planned for, and COVID, which you could never have planned for. And if you'd have said, you have these career plans and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this, and they would never have registered. But actually, they gave me just amazing pinch myself moments. I remember I went to the House of Lords to meet a baroness about Brexit. And so when you go into the House of Commons,
what
they're
was
very...
that to do with regulatory, Katie? Was it to do with potential, because of coming out of Europe and potential rules changes?
Yeah, it was...
Right.
Yeah,
not
so...
being big, but I just thought, I wondered whether that was it.
Yeah, so basically, before we left, everything that governed all of our products was aligned with Europe. So it was trying to help politicians to understand the consequences of what it meant. There's a lot of the discussions that I had were very practical. Like, this is what it means in a warehouse. This is what it means in a factory. Do you really, really mean you want us to do that? Or can we do something different? And I'll never forget. So when you go into the House of Commons, they're very used to the public going in. They have big security and it's just like going through an airport. And so I went to the House of Lords, which is not. So you go in this tiny little door, which is a bit like a church door. And you go through the security, which is the same. And then the only way I can explain it is it's a bit like Hogwarts crossed with a nursing home. So you go in and you're in this like vaulted room and everybody in there, it's a cloakroom, so they all have a peg with their name on. So literally it's like being at school. It's Lord so and so, lady this, Lord that. And then as you walk through at the end, all of their mobility scooters are parked up in a line.
Oh my God.
Because they're all of a certain age. So anyway, I went in and I met this lady and she was fabulous. She was the most amazing lady. And she walked in and went to her office and she said, "Oh, what are you here for, dear?" I said, "I'm here to talk about Brexit." "Good God," she said, "I need a gin." And she took me to the House of Lords bar and she said, "Would you like a gin?" I said, "No, I'm at work. I've got to go to a meeting after this." And like proper amazing pinch myself moment that, like... Just, little old me in a regulatory. Most people think of regulatory as form fillers and box tickers, and there I am sat talking to just amazing people. And I just fabulous opportunities. So I spoke to politicians in London, spoke to politicians in Brussels, all sorts of things. And at some point I must have crossed paths with somebody who thought I was useful and helpful. And then I got this email through saying, "You are being considered for a Queen's Garden party. Please send us your information." And I remember going, "My God, am I allowed to go?" And so I ended up going to Buckingham Palace and...
Oh, did you?
Going to a Queen's Garden party, so buying a hat.
My mum went to a Queen's Garden party and I was like...
Do you remember the letter? The letter, it was so thick. It was such...
I've got it. I keep meaning to frame it and put it up in the downstairs loo, but I haven't. But I've kept the envelopes.
Did you meet the Queen? I know. Did you see the Queen?
Yeah, really, really close. So she was probably she was close. So they line you up.
You and the Queen are probably the same height, aren't you?
Yeah, we probably were, to be honest. They line you up in rows and then they put certain people in the middle for her to talk to. So, but I was close enough that I could hear her having a conversation with the people there. So it was... No, well, this was the sad thing. So because it was through work that I'd done, I didn't get a +1. So I went on my own, which was a bit odd, and for various reasons. Ended up, my mum came down to London with me, so we had a nice lunch, and then my mum dropped me off at Buckingham Palace, a bit like the school gate.
I was gonna say, have a nice time, Katy, love.
But say hello to Lily.
Yeah, exactly. And in true British style, it was absolutely freezing. So it was like end of May, early June. It was absolutely freezing, and I just remember, I kind of walked around this corner and there was this butler guy there and he had 2 trays, one in each hand. And on one hand was ice creams, and on the other hand was rain ponchos. And I thought, is there anything more British?
Oh no, I don't actually think that there is.
With a
You're
brass
not allowed
band
to take
playing in the
photographs, are
background.
you? You're not allowed to take photographs, are you?
You can, not inside.
Slightly.
You can't you're not allowed
Yeah.
to take photographs inside because you walk through the palace, but once
Yeah.
you're outside, you can.
That does make sense. There's probably
Yeah,
a
it does,
massive
yeah.
security threat, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, look, I had amazing opportunities, and I think probably the theme that kind of has run through my career is just not overthinking it, not over planning it, and kind of taking the opportunities when they come. And if it sounds interesting and it sounds different, then why not, really?
Is that just who you are nature wise, or have you had to learn to just have you had to learn to be that way? Because I'd imagine, like, I think if it was me, I'd find that really difficult to just sort of let the opportunity come your way and don't overthink it. Really, is what I'm trying to get at here. Because
Yeah, I think it's a number of things. So I think first of all, it's the circumstances that I found myself in. So the very first company that I worked in, I'd only been there not that long. And I was taken aside into a room, and they brought a consultant in, and we knew the company wasn't doing very, very well. And they took me and a colleague, who's now my husband, but that's another story, into a room and said, we're going to basically close down half of the business. We're going to put you guys in day-to-day charge of it. And these are the people on the stay list. These are the people on the go list. And I remember I was like 23. I was like, this
oh
is
my
insane.
god,
And I remember sort of saying, like, I need a minute. And I remember going outside, and I rang my dad. And I never ring my dad. I always ring my mum. But I rang my dad, and I was like, Dad, what should I do? And he went, go for it. What have you got to lose? Like,
Yeah.
if nothing, it was something, it was a company that had never turned a profit anyway. So he said, what,
yeah,
you've got nothing left to mess up because it's already broken.
yeah.
Just go for it. And I did. And it was an amazing learning opportunity. And that opportunity is where I learned to trust my gut, I think, as well. Because, like I say, they said, these are the people on the stay list, these are the people on the go list. And I remember looking at the list going, well, there's two people on the stay list that I really think should be on the other list. They were like, no, you're wrong. And I was like, all right, okay, fine.
You probably, I don't know whether you watch it, but Ellie, what is that reminiscent of, the stay in the go list? Like
The Office.
The Office US, when they've got the left and the right and it keeps changing. And it's like, it's really interesting to what you're saying about how someone makes that list based on their perception. Like, and then you can change it. Like, and did you change the list? Did you?
Well, no, this was the thing. This is where I learned to trust my gut, because they were like, no. We think those two individuals need to stay for these reasons. And I was like, okay, fine, but I've got concerns. And then 6 months later, they were like, we need to performance manage these two people. We need to deal with it. So I at that point, I kind of learned to trust my gut. So, and I guess I have a sense of, if things feel right, and if things are meant to work out, they will. But then, that having said that, I moved into a much more of a kind of corporate career, and it's very much about what's your next move, what's your 5-year plan, all that sort of stuff. And I was
Have you
I was
filled your
very
appraisal form in online and by a certain
yeah,
date?
and I was very invested in that, I guess, because it's what you do. I was very much kind of, you do your GCSEs, you do your A levels, you go to university, and then and and so I was very invested in that. And then, complete bolt out the blue, I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 29. And suddenly, everything that you thought was certain is not certain. And I always say to people now, I look back now, and as you say, Karen, I'm a bit of a storyteller. I always say I was on the motorway, and I was quite happy on the motorway, and the motorway is quite
I
straightforward,
thought you
right?
meant literally, but this is the motorway of life. Sorry.
Yeah, the motorway of life. Yeah, no, metaphorically.
Sorry. Yeah.
You're on the motorway, and your next thing is, you're going to buy a house, you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, and that's the path. And suddenly I was thrown off.
Yeah.
Like, completely thrown off, and I was chucked on the back roads, and
At such a young age as well. Like,
yeah,
because if you think about the M1, like when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was probably like a Lancaster, like not Lancaster, that's the wrong side, Boroughbridge, and you were like right at the beginning. It's like, you know, like I was halfway up my motorway, you know, like if you
Yeah.
Borough, which is the M6. So yeah.
And
Sorry.
so I think, yeah, and so I was kind of thrown off the motorway, if you like, and it took me a long while to realise that I'll still get there, but the route will take a bit longer. But actually, it'll be a bit prettier. It'll be a bit nicer, and there's more to learn, and there's more to experience. And then I think after that, I think me and my husband are now terrible at planning. So for us, if we book a holiday 4 weeks in advance, that's going some. Like, and I think it removes certainty.
Yeah, it does.
Right up until that point, you're just kind of trundling along in life, and suddenly it completely throws you off. And I remember at the time when I was telling people that I'd been diagnosed, I had a very, very special friend who'd had cancer. She was a lot older than me. She had cancer. I worked with her, and she said to me, she said, "My dear, it's a gift." And I remember at the time thinking, what the? Don't do one.
Doesn't feel like it.
It's not a gift, it's shit. It's really, really bad. But I kind of can look back now, you know, I'm a good 12, 13, 14 years down the line now, and I can look back and kind of get what she meant.
Yeah,
because
it's a strange old word. Like when people say it's a gift, I think you said it earlier. It shows you that there's a different way to live your life.
It gives you perspective. It gives you a totally different perspective. It recalibrates what matters and what's important. And I think we're very conditioned, generally speaking, to keep progressing in your career, to do more, to do more, to do more, to want more. And actually, those sort of experiences remind you that it's not about what you have. It's not about kind of where you're going. It's about the gift of being alive. And I know that sounds really, really corny, but
no, it
you
doesn't.
know, I've lost people that I met along the way, and it's not guaranteed. It's absolutely not guaranteed, and it's really, really precious. And but it also, I think, as I did progress in my career, which I kind of see as an achievement in itself, you know, to come back into an organization, to not only survive but thrive and progress, you know, and I think I didn't really talk about it at the time because it wasn't something you talked about. I think if I lived it now, you know, things like the conversation that you have around, you know, there is a massive conversation about menopause now. It's very well known, it's very well understood. You know, I did 5 years of that when I went back to work. So I'm sat there, you know, I'm in my early 30s and I'm going through the menopause, and I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really hard. And I think, you know, the conversation now would be very, very different. But what it meant was it made me a better leader. It made me a better person because I had perspective. I knew that life happens. And I kind of realized that if you're there for people and you do the right thing for people in the bad times, they will give you 100 times more back in the good times. And actually, you can work within that corporate environment and still be a human and still care, right? And still understand and appreciate that you're not always going to get 100% of people 100% of the time. But that's okay, right? Because it's life and life happens. And I honestly think if I hadn't gone through those experiences, I wouldn't have been as empathetic, and, you know, I would have probably behaved like a lot of the leaders behaved to me, because it wasn't malice, and it was just they didn't understand. They couldn't understand, you know, and they were still on that motorway, they were still powering through, and so I kind of still don't think it was a gift. I think it was awful.
I have to say that I agree 100%. When people say, look upon it as a gift, you think, well, here, I'm giving it you back.
Yeah.
You take the gift from me, you know, like, let's see
Well,
what you do then.
I
Yeah.
always say it's the roller coaster that nobody wants to get on and everybody wants to get off, but you're stuck on.
Mhm.
And but as a person, am I a better person to come out of that? Probably.
Mhm.
It's a difficult thing to define, isn't it? Because what is
Mm.
better? Because it actually what you're living through now is different. So it's like, is that better? I think my experience of it is it makes you, and I think you summed it up, in you have a different perspective. But what I've also learned is that doesn't make it any easier, because you've still got to go to work, you've still got to earn money, you've still got to
Oh,
you've
the
still got to have
expectations there.
responsibilities. You can't just get up and go and live on an island. Oh, I guess you could. And I think,
No,
Yeah.
but
do you
it's
know
an
what I mean?
interesting one. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's something that I really struggled with. At you know, everybody sort of gives you the tilty head. Oh, you're so brave. I'm not brave. I'm trying to stay alive.
I
I've got
don't
to
have
do
a
what.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't pick this. I don't have a choice. But what I wasn't expecting, and I don't think you can't prepare yourself for it, is that what is normal,
Yeah.
Mm.
right? And I remember, and I still sometimes feel it now, not so much, but I remember distinctly this real conflict in my head between I'm back and I'm fine and don't treat me any differently because everything's going back to normal, with what the hell is normal, and just cut me some slack and give me a break. And there's this conflict within myself. So how I could possibly expect other people to get it right when I couldn't even work out what
Mhm.
it was in myself. But you, like you say, Karen, you're recalibrating what normal is, and
And
everything's
yeah.
changed. Everything you thought you knew, the life that you planned, the life that you expected, everything's up in the air. It's like throwing a grenade in your life. And I think
Mm.
it can be anything, right? It
You
can
can't be
be,
shattered assumptions. It's that's the model, like with COVID, where your assumptive view of the world is like taken away from you. So it can be anything. It's anything that changes that, and how you become uncertain, how you've lost control, how you become vulnerable, how, like,
mm,
and I think unless you've experienced that, it's really hard for anybody else. And I think about me when I was a leader, and I think I won't even tell you, and you think, God almighty, some of the things I lacked. I'm not even saying it was empathy. I think it was ignorance or understanding.
mm.
And I think if anything that happens that shatters that world, you should aim to be a better person. That's what I think for me
I
is
remember
important.
also feeling this huge pressure to like jack my job in or go run a marathon or go throw
Yeah.
myself
I
out
had a
of a
list.
plane.
I had a list. It was
Yeah.
like ridiculous.
And but I didn't want
I
any
gave
of
it up
that.
when I went to hot yoga with your mum, because hot yoga was on it. I remember turning up, and like Leslie was really good at yoga and I wasn't, and I took my size 8 daughter's Under Armour thermal leggings by mistake, and I was at the back of this hot yoga, which is the hottest. With, you won't know, but Ellie knows, with Leslie and Scott Keenan,
Mhm.
and I just thought, this is not feel the fear and do it anyway. What are you doing, Karen? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's when I gave my list up, because I thought, you're in thermal leggings, you hate yoga, you're going to be sick, but you're so competitive, you're going to go right to the end. And I just thought, but I think you go into that phase, don't you, when you've gone through something, which is, I've got to live life and I can't risk it. And then you just
I
think,
was gonna say, is it like a because I can sort of see, like, you can both look back now, so I can understand how, like, yeah, get it. It's still not a gift, but you can see sort of where she was coming from with that.
yeah,
In the moment, you're going through it, and first off, I think from that moment that you're told, I don't know that you can process anything after that, and then to go straight into, and this is what we're going to do, and this is the treatment, and this is how this will blah blah blah. Then you have to go through all that treatment, and then you get to the other side of it. In my head, someone who has not been through this, by the time you've come out the other side of it, I'd imagine you're still processing the fact that someone has told you that,
yeah,
like, you have a significant health issue, and then to feel the pressure to be like, well, I'm okay now, and I have to go back to work and I have to be normal and I have to, and you haven't even started to. I've lost myself on what my point was at the beginning of
I think
this
you're right,
sentence.
though. I think the other thing, though, as well, is when it happens, you basically hand the reins of your life over to the medics, and you say, right, tell me what I need to do, and you go where you need to go. Like, suddenly time becomes a very different. I don't know if you found this, Karen, but like they'd say, "Oh, be here at this time," and you'd be like, "Yeah, okay." Whereas in the past, you'd be like, "Well, no, I can't do that. I've got a meeting. I've got this."
You haven't
can't.
Do you? It's like
You just go, and
I remember trying to negotiate with the radiotherapy people that I didn't want a 2:00 in the afternoon one because it was late, and they're like, "You come when you're given the time." I'm like,
"Yeah, this is your slot." But so you go through this process, and you've handed over the reins of your life, but they don't give you them back.
No.
Yeah.
So you're kind of scrabbling around on the floor, trying to find them, and you're adjusting to whatever your new self is. And I went back to work with hindsight too quickly, but I was really worried that I was going to run out of sick pay, and
you've found your way back on the motorway, and suddenly you're doing 70 mile an hour, and you're thinking, hang on, where did the motorway show up?
Yeah, and I was very much in an organisation where when you're there, and when you're not, you're not. There's like phased return was like a bit of a like, what the? Okay. So you're scrabbling around and you're trying to find the reins of your life and who you are, and like you say, it takes time for everything to catch up. But I guess going back to your very first question, Ellie, miles ago, what it meant is, I guess I was more prepared to try because I didn't plan. Like, I remember, like, we got married just over a year after my treatment, and I got really, really emotional, and I realised it was because in my mind, I wasn't sure if it was going to happen because I was waiting for the next grenade to blow everything up. So we stopped planning. And so actually then, because I wasn't really planning my career and I wasn't planning anything, I could just take these opportunities when they came up. And, you'd start working on something interesting and it would turn into something and you'd be like, yeah, all right, I'll give it a go. Like, I didn't need to necessarily always overthink it and what is the consequence, because the consequence was never going to be that big.
Yeah, like,
right?
That literally and figuratively you'll survive. Like,
yeah, it'll be fine. And I think that's one of the things that I've kind of learned as well is no role is forever, right? And you don't need to, and I think it's very easy for us to get stuck in that this is my job and this is what I do, and then and it can change. And it's okay to get it wrong. And I think sometimes we really hang our hat on it has to be absolutely perfect and everything has to be right. And it doesn't. And what's the worst that can happen? And one of the things that I kind of really think about, and when you're in particularly a corporate environment, but when you're kind of in that career mode that a lot of people get into, you're always thinking about your CV, right? And what goes on my CV and what's the next thing to add to it and what's the next thing to add to it. And I remember having a conversation with somebody and they gave me a completely different perspective. And they said, no, but what's in your eulogy? And I remember at the time thinking, geez, that's morbid.
Yeah.
What a miserable thing to think. What a miserable thing.
I've got through the treatment. Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, it's true. Because if you think about any funeral you ever go to and any eulogy you ever hear, the work part of it is probably like a couple of sentences around the rest of somebody's life. And it just, one of those moments that just makes you stop and makes you really think about, what am I on this planet to do? And what do I want people to think of me? And, it's that old joke, isn't it? Nobody ever has they work too hard on their gravestone.
Yeah.
But it kind of is that. And I guess having that period of time so young where you think, shit, I could die. It makes you, one, realize how precious life is, but two, I don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
Because, not everybody has the privilege to come out the other side, right? And I hate the words fight and warrior and
It's
all of that
so stupid.
bullshit, because it's not helpful.
It's not helpful.
So wrong. But I do think that I feel that I was lucky in that I've come out the other side and I'm relatively well, and but that happened at a point in my life where I still had time to then make the most of my life and think about what matters. And we all get caught up in work and stuff like that. Like, I'm not saying that I'm suddenly this evangelical, because I'm not, right? I still get caught up in work.
I think I've looked into this quite a lot. During the immediacy, and like when Ellie was saying, when you're in the moment, you are like in this, I'm never going to waste a minute, I'm never going to waste a minute. But to be able to
That's
deal,
what I was trying to say.
Yeah, to be able to deal and live life without always thinking the cancer's back, you have to go back to a normal. And so when you go back into that normal, then normality creeps in. So I did quite a lot. The bit post discharge is a really difficult time because it's when you're searching for who you are and all that, and the two worlds conflict. And I think that I can't remember what on earth I was going to say here, but it was something about you have to almost not forget what you've gone through, because else you couldn't live life in reality if you were always living life about, I've had cancer, I might have cancer, it might come back.
I mean, I've been very...
That was rubbish. Sorry, I lost my track.
No, I know what you mean, but I think for me, and it doesn't sound like this because I've just spoken about it for 10 minutes, but I try not to be something that defines me. I try to have it. It's something that happened to me. It's something that shaped who I am.
Yeah.
But like, I would never ever introduce myself as I'm Katy and I'm a cancer survivor, which some people do.
I don't,
right?
I don't.
No, but
some
but
people
I think,
aren't, as we all know. Do you like so?
And that's not that's not through any fault of anybody. But I think it happened to me. I want to learn from it. I want to become better because it happened. But then, how can I be a better person beyond that? And I think
when you went back to the corporate world after that, did you see that place in a different environment? Like I don't mean rose-colored glasses, but had your lens on that world changed? Did it make you less or more tolerant with the corporate world? I know that's probably a difficult question, but
I think it's a really interesting question, because on the one hand, I didn't have time for all the bullshit.
Yeah. I wondered whether there were tolerances was what I was really thinking about when I asked that question.
But on the other hand, there was something comfortingly familiar about it.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to ask a similar question, because sorry to have cut you off there, but we speak to loads of women who have set up on their own and they've started their own business as a result of mainly a major life event, whatever that looks like. And what's interesting is you've done that now, but you didn't do that at the time. And so I was going to ask a similar sort of question to Karen is and the fact that you've said, the familiarity of it, that actually makes total sense.
Yeah,
sorry to have just interrupted you.
No, I mean, I think that's it. I think
I agree.
I think going back into that environment, I had a reputation that I could fall back on. People knew who I was. They knew what I'd done, which was a double-edged sword, but they did. Yeah. But I knew how to operate in that world. I knew how to behave. I knew what was expected of me. And because everything else had kind of seismically shifted, actually that familiarity of, the machine keeps running whether you're in it or not. And that I think was more of a bigger learning for me. There were some things that I finished at the Christmas and then basically didn't go back till Easter. I had that kind of first part of the year off. And there were some things that I left and it literally had not moved a millimeter in all that time. And then there was some stuff that had like completely run off in a train in a completely different direction, and some stuff was where I expected it. So I think that was very helpful, right? Because you realize the machine carries on, but you also realize unless people have a passion for it, or unless there's a real desire for it, stuff doesn't move. And I think that was a really helpful learning for me in terms of that environment. But actually to go back to the normal, right, at this point of the year we do this, and at this point of the year we do end of year ratings, and this point of the year we do set objectives, to go back to something that was very familiar. I knew what I was doing, I knew how to operate. I couldn't have coped with more change. I couldn't have coped with more.
Like requires new thinking. Sorry,
I set up my own. No, it's a really good point. I set up my own business when I had finished not quite finished my treatment. And you look back on it now, and actually, it's a really point well made. I had nothing familiar about anything I did. Nothing at all. And I leapt into it with I'd been made redundant, and I thought nobody's going to employ me. What sort of a rationale is that? And it's actually a really interesting thing to think about how you give familiarity to people. It's just a really interesting.
But I think it's something that we undervalue and we underestimate.
Yeah,
right. And I think there's also that part. And for me personally, I can only change so much of my life at once. Right. So I can't do work plus home life plus moving house. You know what I mean? Or whatever that looks like. I need some bits that are solid and safe because even I got to quite a senior level in the corporate environment, but one of the things, and I remember sharing it relatively recently and shocking people, I'm not very good with change.
I don't. We're not as
and
humans are creatures of habit.
We're not, and actually there is and it's something that I'm kind of grappling with now. So I left that environment in March, and I've been self-employed, and that's one of the things that I miss. I miss the familiarity of, right, okay, it's September, we do this. It's November, we do this. It's partly because I've been conditioned because I was in that environment for so long, but partly because it's comfortable. It's safe. And I think we talk a lot about, stretching yourself and going out of your comfort zone. But I think it's also worth acknowledging that you don't have to stretch all of your comfort zones all at the same time. And actually, if your home comfort zone is unstable, then sticking with a job that's not perfect, but you know what you're doing and you know where you're at, is all right too. And I think as humans, we tend to focus on changing everything all at the same time. And that can just be too much to cope with. So for me, actually going back into a place really helped. It wasn't easy, and there was so much other adjustment. But I think, acknowledging and appreciating that, the people knew me. They knew what I'd been through. So they did kind of cut me a bit of slack if I was having a wobbly day, or because I didn't have to go explain myself, justify myself, go through everything, because it's Katy and this is what she does and this is how she is, kind of thing. So the challenge is then, at what point do you step out of that familiarity? Right? And what point is that familiarity not helping you? And that's not always easy to read, but I don't see it as a bad thing, I guess is what I'm saying. But like I say, what it did enable me to do, because I had that reputation and I was trusted there, I was given all sorts of amazing opportunities, and I made so many connections with amazing people. And I think it doesn't matter how big or small the organization is, it doesn't matter how good the systems and the processes are. At the end of the day, you work with people, and that's what matters, right? And that's, I think, particularly now in this world of AI and all that good stuff, people and human connection is really, really undervalued. And it's a really important part of what going to work is. And I think I feel quite lucky that I'm at the point of my career that I am now, because I think to be leaving university and going into the workplace, or leaving school and going into the workplace now, must be incredibly difficult.
Really hard.
So I think from that point onwards, my career has been about taking those opportunities, but also trusting my gut. Like, some opportunities have come up and I've just gone, do you know what, this doesn't sit right, it doesn't feel right, things are not slotting into place. And whereas previously I'd have probably fought it, being like, no, we're going to make this work and we're going to make it happen, now I'm like, this isn't meant to work out. Okay, what's the next thing round the corner? And I really now, rather than thinking about, you know, what could my next role be, what could my next thing be, it's more around, how prepared am I for whatever may come round the corner? And I think by thinking of it like that, I also don't put those boundaries on myself. I don't put those limitations in terms of what the next role could be. But I also don't put those expectations on myself of I should be here or I should be there, which I think it's the trap that it's easy to fall into when it's, you know, what's my next role? What's my next role? What's my next role? I also think the workplace is in a constant state of change and flux. So aiming for a box is not particularly helpful, because the box probably isn't going to be there by the time you get there, or it's going to look different, or it's going to be called different. And so chasing a box on an org chart, it's not helpful, I think.
And I find it, and it's really weird, because it is that innate thing, and all of us, like, I've got to do that, and I've got to do this, and I'm not where I should be, and blah blah blah, and then you look around and you think, and no one is. Every single person's making it up. Everyone's winging it. People look like they have a plan. They haven't got a clue, and we're all just putting this weird pressure on ourselves for this kind of really made up thing.
Or
and honestly,
outliers who have got a plan. Like,
I was going to say,
and it's like, and it's so, what's the word, counterproductive to what they're trying to do. Like, and there's not very many people. I've only met a few people who are so intent on, let's say it's to be a director, which tends to be, and they are so intent on that they forget about the whole world around them. Do you like?
But I saw it a lot. You know, I was very lucky. I worked with some amazing people, and I had a lot of very talented team members. And I distinctly remember this one lady, super talented, super amazing person, and we got her promoted. And literally, the next one-to-one we had the week after, she was like, "Right, how do I get to the next one?" And I remember saying, just take a moment to look around. Right, you've just climbed this hill. Before you start running up the next one, just take a look around, reflect on what you've achieved. And I think that is something that as humans we're not very good at. And I'm terrible at it, right? Like I can speak it till the cows come home. I don't do it to myself, but actually just take a step back. Look at what we have achieved. Look at what we have done, rather than chasing what comes next and where we might think we want to go. Just turn around a little bit and go, hang on a minute, look how far I've come, look how much I've changed, look at what I've achieved. Because as humans, we are natural problem solvers, and I think particularly as women as well, we're natural problem solvers. And so we move on to the next problem before we ever reflect back on what's happened. You know, it's the next, what's the next mess to fix? What's the next problem to solve? Rather than actually taking a step back and going, flipping heck, look how much we have. I mean, look at you guys, right? If you think about where...
Don't say anything nice, Katy.
No, but if you think about where Woot was 6-9 months ago, but I bet you guys have not taken the time to look back and reflect on how far you've come and how much you've done, because what you're focusing on is what you need to do next.
Yes.
Right? And what's next? And I think I'm not saying, you know, you spend all your time navel gazing and looking backwards and aren't I amazing, but I think it's just taking that moment to say, geez, look how far we've come, look what we have achieved, because it's never enough, right? Because we always want more. But unless you kind of look back, you can't realise how far you have come. And like I say, I'm amazing at saying it. And, you know, anybody who's worked with me...
that with your foray into self-employment then, Katy?
Terrible. I'm awful at it. I'm really, really bad. And
Take a look, Katy, I just want to ask you for a minute. Take a look around you on the top of that hill and see what you've achieved.
No, it's true, right? It is true. And, I do have to do that because, the last 6 months I've set up a business, I've built a website, I've got clients, but we don't, do we? Naturally, we don't. And I think
it's amazing.
Particularly as women, we don't. And I think...
Why do you think that is, Katy? I know it's a very subjective question. Why do you think that's an innate thing that women are, particularly women, do tend to immerse themselves in?
I don't know. I think it's a couple of things. I think there's a very practical element of, well, that's done now. That's done now. Let's move on to the next thing that needs doing. I think there's quite a practical element.
I was just laughing my socks off at Ellie asked if she could have time with me to present her to-do list, which was Ellie's stream of consciousness.
I think there's that, and I think it's also life is so busy, right? We're constantly bombarded with so much in terms of things to do, places to be, who to see, who to talk to. There just isn't the breathing space. But actually, the breathing space is what's so important, because that's when you learn. You learn when you look back and you think, right, okay, what would I have done differently? What could I do differently? How could I approach this if I hit it again? But we don't make the time for that. And I think it is a time thing, and it's a perceived value thing. Is that a valuable use of my time?
I also think, because we work a lot with reflective practice, lots of people aren't self-aware. So even the art of taking time to look back, you've started from the wrong point. So I remember somebody who worked for me. He was our process improvement manager. He was a lovely chap, and he used to say, every time when I'm in the car, Karen, went, I evaluate what I've done in the day, like what I've done well, even better. I remember having a conversation with him, which was, what are you basing that on?
How are you calibrating that?
Where's your self-awareness about whether that? And so I think for women, I think there's also a challenge that we don't really understand ourselves and our strengths and all those things to be able to do reflective practice that's really positive and proactive. But
I think it's a self-value thing as well, and a self-confidence thing. I find it hugely uncomfortable to think about where I've done a good job. I just do. Inherently, it makes me ooh.
I think it's really British as well. It's
definitely
none of us want to do that.
I don't know I don't know whether somebody told us to do this or whether I'd read it somewhere. But I was like, you go through a phrase, which is, have a gratitude. What are you grateful for? And I either read something or somebody said it to us or something, and it was about, instead of doing that, think about at the end of the day what's been brilliant today. And it just really changes your focus because I try and do when I go to bed, what's been brilliant today.
But brilliant is such a huge word. Can I change it for a different word? Because we're talking day to day, brilliant things happening every day.
Oh well, mine was the dog didn't bark in the morning, because I think it helps me not be about, it's about me. Do you so it's like
right? Okay, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like what's been brilliant isn't like what have I done brilliantly today. And so where I'm going with this rambling is, I think that you are 100% right. And there's no easy answer to this because it's so nuanced and complex. How are you approaching that for you and the journey you've gone on, in your business and where you want to go in the future? What's your method of trying to reflect on what you've done?
I don't have one.
I didn't think you were going to say that, but that's honest.
Oh no, but I love it because it's true. Do you know what I mean?
Katy the
true.
Sage. I haven't got one.
Well, no, but I am a master of good advice that I don't follow myself, right? And I think we all are. And the reality is,
it's just words.
I don't do gratitudinous. No. And I've tried, and I just feel uncomfortable with it. So, I think it's probably a self-confidence thing. I think I come across quite confident, but actually underneath it all, I'm not that confident, and I'm pretty shy. And I think that I remember a very, very, a very good friend of mine who was my boss once said to me, you just need to get out of your own way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, right? The person who was holding me back was me. And I still think that's the case now. I have an amazing husband who reminds me, he's my biggest cheerleader, and he helps me because I'm just not very good at it, is the
I think
honest
as
answer.
well, I think it's all well and good to say you need to get out of your own way, and they're probably right. But unless you're telling someone or helping them decide how to get out of it, what's the point in saying get out of your... If I knew how to get out of my own way, I'd have got out of my own way.
It's like,
no,
thanks for
but
stating the bleeding obvious.
Yeah.
it was said with the right intent at the
Yeah,
right time, and they then did give me that help. But I think sometimes it's just that external voice to help you to recognize what you're doing in yourself. And I think
I think you're right, and that's where women need to choose wisely where they get their advice and support and guidance from, because there's a whole plethora of get out of your own way, speak up more, be more assertive, like all of these things that women are advised to do. So I think for me, what we've heard over all the podcasts and all the work we do is finding that ally, that person that is has got your back and actually helps you how to do it is really key for women when there's like a plethora of like there's ads on like what's the word, unreliable sources.
I mean, I think one of the things that's helped me with that, and it's a concept that I've followed and trained out to people and share with people a lot, is the idea of a personal boardroom. So the theory is, and there's a great book, and it's often like free or 99p on Kindle, so I'm not going to take any credit for it. But it's a really nice idea, and the simple premise is a CEO does not have one person that he asks for all the help from. He has a team of people in his boardroom that advise him on different things. And why should us as individuals and our careers be any different? So rather than, I need a mentor or a coach, actually you have different people who play different roles for you. And some people will be those who big you up and build your confidence and make you feel better. Some of the roles there are more around challenging you, making you think. Some of the roles are more around really kind of giving you that kick up the arse when you need it, or that difficult conversation. So, and there are very much kind of defined roles in terms of people who open doors for you, or people who play different roles for you. And I found that quite helpful, because everybody says, oh, you need a mentor. I'm like, but yeah, okay, great. I mean, I remember being given a mentor. What was the word? It wasn't mentor. It was some sort of other word. Sponsor. Yeah, this is your sponsor. And I remember saying,
the new mentor name, it's ridiculous.
But that person doesn't know me. They don't know who I am. They don't know what I do. They're not in the rooms and the forums where I'm being talked about. So what is their role? It's just a badge. But actually, I think this idea of having different people who you lean on at different points when you're having different issues. They say it takes a village, right? That's just your village. But if right, I'm not having a good day, I need to talk to the people who are going to build me up, you're doing it with some level of thought and some level of intentionality. And I think that's really important. And so that's something that I've tried to do, is build my boardroom, build my village around me to help me when I can't help myself, right? Because there are times when you do just need, and sometimes you need that friend who's going to give you a good talking to and say, get over yourself and move on.
Yeah,
but it's about knowing the right person at the right time for the right situation. But that is a book that I actually read, because I don't read business, but people give me business. I used to get given all these business books. They're all collecting dust in a corner because it's just not my bag.
Thank you.
Really... Thanks, great. But that is one that actually I could read, resonated, made sense, and I actually use, and I've actually used with other people as well. But a lot of these things, I don't have time for that, honestly.
No,
well, we look forward to getting you back next year and hearing your reflection.
I was gonna say, because obviously we've spoken about you setting up your own business, but we haven't got too much into it. But for you and for our lovely listeners, we are thinking of starting I say we, Karen, is thinking of starting a different podcast for people that have founded their own businesses and what the self-employment and setting up a business journey looks like. So I think it would be really good.
Yeah, I do.
Because you are at the beginning bits of it, to get that insight from it.
Co-host, what do you think?
I think so. Oh Christ, I'm not joking, Kate. I'm not joking. This has been incredible. I think you've done an amazing job, and I think there's a role for you if you want it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think honestly, one of the things that I've learned very quickly in this self-employment world is how much everybody helps each other. The number of people who've reached out to me for a coffee and have said, well, if I hear of anything, I'll pass it to you. If you hear of anything, pass it to me. And it's something that I didn't even know existed. It's something that I did. And it's been one of the most heartening pieces around, people set up their own business for various different reasons. Some people do it as a passion. For me, it was kind of a consequence of circumstance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that I would have necessarily planned? Maybe, but probably not yet. But, circumstances happen and here I am. But I think one of the most heartening things I found is it's not such a kind of cutthroat dog eat dog type world.
Yeah.
People do want to help each other out. They, it's almost like you kind of let into this little world that you didn't know existed where, people say, I need help with this, and you pass it on because it's not you, but somebody else.
That's why we've been thinking about how Women of Our Time can help with that, because it is invisible. It's
completely invisible. And, people say to me, go do networking events. And I'm like, but if I go to a network event, a self-employed networking event where I live, they will have absolutely nothing in common with me because most of the people around here are self-employed as, I don't know, a plumber or a nail technician or, whereas I sit here in this chair 7 days a week. And apart from talking to my husband and talking to people on Zoom, I may never meet another person.
Yeah.
So it's just and so it's actually about how do you, there are people who are doing similar things to me or in the same industries as me, but it's how do you find them and how do you connect with them? That's the hard part.
Productive way, which is what as Ellie said, that's definitely going to be part of the membership community. I'm just thinking.
And I think, the other thing,
because it's only when it's going out. Sorry, love.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I think the other thing as well is there's so much about setting up your own business that you don't even realize, particularly when you're somebody like me who's come out of a big organization that I'd been in for 16 years. Really simple stuff like I have to get my email working.
Yeah.
Like there's no IT man that I can ring up and go, my internet's stopped. Why? Well, there is. It's my husband and he's sat downstairs. But do you know what I mean? And it's
awful.
It's not the big stuff that you expect.
Because you know what you're doing with the big stuff.
Because the big stuff, there's loads of advice, how to set up a company. Well, you go to, there's advice for that. But it's the small, simple things like I had to give a presentation to a client and I realized I had no template because all I have is the PowerPoint ones and they look crappy. And, and I think that for me has been, part of the learning curve is actually what are the basic foundational building blocks that I need to be able to function.
Setting up their office is go for HP Instant Ink as your printer company because it's the most efficient way because you've always got ink and you can upgrade your plans. Because
I'm going to reach out to them and see if they'll sponsor this portion of the podcast for the free shout out.
Well, I'm gonna say something slightly controversial now. Who prints stuff off, Karen? You're showing your age there, mate.
We do because when you do workshops, you have to.
Yeah, no, that's
people
true.
like they like a workbook. Do you know, they like a workbook. So I think there's well, watch this space is what I would say for what Women of Our Time and the Womaniverse is going to do, and maybe Katy's going to be co-hosting the new podcast.
But Katy will be there in some capacity, I've no doubt.
I'll help out in some capacity, but I mean, and I think that's what I would, obviously you guys were very kind at the start thanking me, but actually I want to thank you because I came out of 16 years of full-on employment and suddenly I was like, what do I do? And I think, that adjustment was huge. And actually being able to do some work with you guys and focus on something and have something to give me some structure in my day was huge, huge for my mental well-being, huge for me helping me find my new place in the world, because it was a huge adjust. It still is a huge adjust.
And now you're too busy.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
you know what
joke.
I mean, though? Like, I think it, you talk about big life changes, something like this is a big life change and it takes a big adjustment. And so actually, you guys giving me those opportunities just helped me to find my way a little bit as well. So I really appreciate that too. It's a two-way street, and I want to say thank you to you guys as well.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Right, okay, Katy. Last and final question for you then.
Okay.
If you had to choose a song to be the theme song for your life, what song would it be?
So I'm going to choose something that's a bit cheesy and then I'll explain why.
Okay.
So the song that I will choose is Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. And there's a number of reasons why. The first one is at a very simplistic level. There is always a brighter day. Tomorrow the sun will reappear. It may not feel like it at times, and there's been various highs and lows in my life, but actually it does always come back. But on a very personal level, I'm a daddy's girl, and I used to remember that first sunny morning in spring, that first sunny weekend in spring. My dad would turn this song up to the max, blast it out the house and sing along. And that reason and that memory was the reason why when he walked me down the aisle to that song.
Aww.
And so that's the reason why, really. But I think it also has a nice message, right? Which is that however dark things get, and they do, right? Life happens. The sun will come back out.
Yeah.
It may take a bit of time and it may look a bit different, but it will come back out. So yeah, that was my choice. Awesome. Cheesy, but
no, it's great. No, that's brilliant.
It's really it's not cheesy at all.
We're going to say thank you for the 18th time. Thank you for coming on and taking the time out of your day and sharing your story with us. And thank you. And thank you to everyone for listening. And we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.